Hey homebrewers, welcome back. My name is Steven. This is Northwest Small Batch Brewing. And today we're going to do a smash beer experiment. What is a smash beer and what's the experiment? Well, stick around and we'll get to it. All right, thanks for sticking with it. So, what is a smash beer? So, smash beer is a single malt. So, you're only going to use one kind of grain. And it's a single hop. Smash, single malt and single hop. Smash beer. So, it keeps it very simple. You get a really good idea of what the flavor profile is of the grain that you're using and how that impacts your beer, and same thing with the hops. So it's real simple to do. You can use it. This is probably one of the easier recipes to just come up with on your own. I'm just going to use my 2-row that I use for my base malt for all of my beers because it's going to have plenty of sugars in it to give me what I need. And remember, it's a single malt, so you can't put more than one kind. So it's going to be 12 pounds of Great Western 2-row, which is what my base malt is usually. That's what I have in the area. And then I'm going to use 2 ounces of hops. I'm going to have 1 ounce that I put in for the full 60-minute boil, and I'll put 1 ounce in at about 5 minutes till the end. I haven't decided what hops I'm going to use yet, but it really doesn't matter. Whatever you want to use is fine. I'm just going to use whatever I have left over in the freezer, so I can use some of that up. So what's the experiment, you're asking? So I'm glad you asked. The experiment is, a while back I did a video and I commented that I found evidence from other people that potentially using heated up sparge water wasn't really necessary. The idea was that you're supposed to heat up your sparge water to 170 degrees and then slowly sparge that over your grain to rinse it. Number one, we found, what I read is that they found that the only reason to heat up that water, the concern mostly is to not heat the water up above 170, because that can cause tannins to be leached out of your grain, and then you get like astringency and stuff in your beer. But if you're not going to use hot water, let's say we're going to use, in this case, the experiment I'm going to do is instead of using hot water, like 170 degree water, I'm just going to use room temperature water. And the idea is it saves me a lot of effort because I don't have to heat stuff up on the stove and measure it and get the right temperature. And there's not going to be tannins because it's not hot, right? It's not hot enough to make tannins, so it's a non-issue. The only other thing I've ever read is that using 170 degree water will basically deactivate the enzymes in your grain, and so they stop producing sugar. I'm not sure that really matters. I mean, you're going to pull the grain out anyway before you boil, so I'll take all the sugar conversion I can get. So I don't see that as a problem. So we'll see. The experiment is just going to be room temperature sparging. I'll use my normal 2 gallons of sparge water, but instead of using 170 degree water, it's just going to be room temperature. So we're talking like 68 degree water, something like that, maybe 65, 68 degree water. I suppose one downturn is it will take longer to get the water up to a boil in the kettle, because you're not adding hot water to the kettle, you're adding colder water. But anyway, it's an experiment. Let's see what happens. Even if it takes longer for the water to come to a boil because I've added room temperature water instead of hot water, I think that's still a benefit for me. I'd rather just push the buttons on the thing until it start heating it up, and then I can go do something else for a minute and come back. As opposed to having to babysit these pots of water on the stove to get them to the right temperature. So, good experiment to test mash temperature and smash beer if you've never done it. See how that turns out. And we'll keg that up and give that a taste. So, I'll see you here in a minute, and I'll just give you a quick view of milling my grain. See you in a moment. All right, everybody. So, I've got everything set up so I can mill my grain. I've got 6 of these vacuum sealed packs that I had vacuum sealed from. I buy a 55-pound bag of this 2-row, and then I just divide it into like 2-pound amounts and take the air out. So I got 12 pounds of it here. I don't even have to weigh it because it's already been weighed for me, so that's super easy. I'm going to pour it into my mill. I'm going to mill it, and then tomorrow I will be ready to start brewing. So I'll see you in a moment, but for me it will be tomorrow, and I'll show you the bucket of grain, and then we'll make this beer. See you in a bit. All right, welcome back everybody to day 2. Good morning. So I have my grain here. I just put this foil to, it's really not necessary, just to keep anything from falling into the bucket. I've got 3.5 gallons heated up to strike temperature, and looking to mash in at 153. If you want to see it, here's the grain. I don't know if you can see it. 12 pounds of grain, 3.5 gallons of water, 153 degrees for an hour. I was going to say, if you were hoping to watch me actually mill the grain, I will post a link up in the corner to a video I did a while back on milling grain. That way I can save a little bit of time for you on this video, and you don't have to watch all of that if you don't want. So I'm going to go ahead and mash in, and I'll be back in an hour for sparging. So see you then. All right, everybody, welcome back. It's been an hour. The mashing's done. I'm pretty happy with the overall, temperature. It was pretty stable throughout the whole mash. So I'm going to turn off the pump here, the recirculation pump. You may not have this on your system. Well, I take it back. I just turned the whole system off. So, since I did that, you get to watch me turn it back on, and I'm going to actually start raising the temperature so it can start heating for the boil, because that will take it a little while. And here it goes. So we might as well start that now. That way, it can start heating now. All right, so there's just a little trick I do to help keep this from dribbling all over the place. I just sort of put a little plastic bag over the pump here, and then later I can clean it. But for now, this will help keep it from dripping all over my floor, even though I do put down a towel these days, as you can see. Okay, so take out my mash paddle. Hopefully that won't fall. For some reason, this handle's not as warm this time. I usually have to use these giant gloves. Also, stay tuned for a video. I may have already posted it, actually. I'll probably have already posted it, but I'm going to do a video. I've ordered something that I'm going to attach to my grain basket that will allow it to sit more firmly on top so it's not so precarious. All right, so this is draining, obviously. And this is where the experiment comes in. I'm going to sparge in 2 gallons of water, but it's going to be room temperature water. I have not heated this up to 170 degrees like I normally would. So this is the test to see, will I end up having not enough gravity points if I don't use the hot water? So we'll find out. I'm going to sparge this in, then another one. That'll be 2 gallons. I'll bring it up to a boil, and I'll be back to show you when we add the hop additions. So we'll be back in a bit. All right, welcome back. It's been an hour. Well, sorry, it hasn't been an hour. It's been I don't know, like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, bringing the wort up to a boil. I can see it starting to boil. I'm going to move the grain that's been draining into a little basin here. I don't know if I think you can probably see it. It's just started to boil. It's hitting the hot break. As soon as that sort of starts to break down on the top there and the foam sort of starts to break down in like, say, 2 minutes, I'll go ahead and put in the hops. The first hop addition, well, both hops are going to be the same because this is a smash beer. So the 60-minute addition is going to go in 1 ounce. Then I'll put another ounce in about 5 minutes before the end. So I'm using Yakima Chief Warrior, and it's 14.2 alpha acid because that's what I had extra of. So that's what I'll use. I'm going to let the grain sit here in a little basin for about 30 minutes into the boil. And then what I'll do is any extra liquid that happens to drain out of it, I'll dump it back in the pot so I'm getting as much as I can. And then the grain will be done at that point. Because sometimes you get a little bit extra that sort of drains out over the next half hour. You might as well use it if you can. So I'm going to do my hop additions. Hop spider goes in. I need to put a string on that so I can lower it down a little bit lower, but we'll get that done and I'll be back like in an hour to finish up. See you then. All right, guys, so here's where we're at. The boil is done. I already did the second addition of hops. It was 5 minutes before the end of the boil. And yeah, so we need to get a reading here. One of the things I need is to know what I call the post-boil volume. So I need to know how much liquid is in there. Unfortunately, my system doesn't have a very good way to read it. It does have hash marks, but they are not accurate because you have to read it while the basket is in there, and while the basket's in there, you can't even see it. So I guess I don't really have to sanitize because this is going into almost boiling liquid, but that's fine. Let's just do it this way. So there's 3, I'm going to call it 3.5. Maybe it's just over that, but I think 3.5 is a fair amount to call what's left, which is a little bit more than I thought, but that's fine. It's good. So post volume is 3.5 gallons. We'll talk about why that's important in a minute. I already took a sample here, and I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get a reading. All you do is you just sort of dribble it over your refractometer and see what kind of reading you can get. 1075, 76, 77, 71, 75, 76, 77. Trying to see if it's 77 or 78. 1, 2, I'm going to say 78. Let's see if I can get it closer to the light. 75, 76, 76, yeah, 78. So I'm going to say it's 1078 right now is the reading that I'm getting. 1078. Why is that important? Well, what we wanted was 1057. And that's fine because I don't have enough water in here. So I knew it wasn't going to be, and that's the way I always do it. I knew it wasn't going to hit. So I'm going to use this, you can't see this probably, but Brewer's Friend Boil Off Gravity Calculator. And I'll put that in the description as always. So you start with putting in your current wort volume, which is 3.5. That's why I measured that. 3.5 gallons. Then I'm going to put in the current gravity. 1078 is the reading I got. The desired gravity, based on my recipe, for this is 1057 for my starting gravity. So this is saying I need to add, looks like 1.2 gallons. So that's interesting. So if it's at 3.5, 4.5, that's shy of 5 gallons. So that's not quite hitting 5.5 gallons that I would have expected. So I have a couple of options. I can top this up to 5.5 and have a beer that's going to have a little less alcohol, or I can just top it up 1.2 gallons and only have, like, I don't know, 4 gallons of beer. The question is, did rinsing it with cold water for the Sparge cause it to have lower gravity number than I had expected? Maybe a little bit. So that's an interesting experiment, because normally I would hit my numbers. So yeah. And realistically, there's a little more than 3.5 gallons in here. I'd say 3.7 gallons. I mean, if I want to try to be more exact. In that case, 1.3. So let's do 1.5 gallons of water. I'm going to add 1.5 gallons of water to this. That'll get me closer to like 5 gallons. So 1.5 gallons difference. I'll just make a note. All right, so I'm going to top this up with 1.5 gallons of water, and then it's just going to have to be cooled down before it can be moved into a fermenter, and we can start the fermentation process. So I'll see you back here when it's at a temperature where I can pitch the yeast. See you later. All right, everybody, welcome to pitching. The temperature actually dropped quickly enough that I can pitch the yeast the same day I've done my boil, which is unusual for me. I took a reading. It's at 1050. I wanted the original gravity to be 1057. It's at about 5 gallons of liquid. So I'm a half gallon off. It's not enough of a variance for me to say there was an issue with using room temperature water to Sparge. Because, for example, when I chose the grain on the brewer's recipe site, it didn't have this exact grain. It had some other kind of, it was very similar, but that could make a difference because it might think I'm having a grain that will give me a different amount of sugars than it did. It doesn't mean it's going to be a bad beer. It's going to be perfectly good. And I think that, in my opinion, the experiment was a success. I mean, it's not that unusual, depending on the recipe and the website, that you're going to be off a little bit on your gravity numbers. But 1050 and 1057 is not such a huge, variance that I'm too worried. I've already sanitized my fermenter on the bottom here. I'm going to go ahead and do what I always do, which is I'm going to dump out my, say what I can of my excess. Actually, I have another vessel I can put it in. This is just sanitizer solution. I hate to throw it out. It's expensive, So I'm going to fill this up with wort multiple times so that I can shake it more easily and get more air sort of worked into it. And then I'm going to pitch the yeast. So I'll be back in a minute. You don't need to watch me shaking, and shaking over and over again. So I'll be back in just a second while I will be pitching the yeast. See you in just a sec. All right, guys, so I told a little fib. I'm actually going to put in the yeast now, and then I'll continue filling as I aerate, the wort, and then dump it in. That way the yeast has a chance to sort of rehydrate and, yeah. So, yes, I know at some point someone will comment that I'm not sanitizing my scissors or the yeast packet. I never have. I never have, and I've never gotten an infection. Now, I'm just saying, if you feel like it's something you need to do to sanitize it, go ahead. I'm not going to touch the yeast packet with the actual fermentation, so I'm not too worried. This is Safale 05. It is my go-to yeast for ale. It is very reliable, great results. If you're not sure what to get and you're making an ale, after I just said I wasn't going to put that in the fermenter, I almost did. If you're not sure what kind of yeast to use and you're making an ale, you can't go wrong with Safale 5. All right, I'm going to finish filling this up. I'll put the lid on it, put an airlock on it, as we always do. Put some tape on the side of it with my readings, and it's going to go in the corner for the next month. And then I'll see you later in a month to put it in the keg and then taste it. So, see you then. Hey guys, I just wanted to pop back on. I don't know if you can see. There it goes. I literally just pitched this yeast. You guys watched me pitch this yeast like 3 minutes ago. And I had packed my camera up and walked away, and I was going to label this thing and put it in the corner. And my gosh, I've never seen a fermentation take off within minutes of pitching the yeast. I would say the wort, when I checked it, it was about 76 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a little warmer than I like, but I keep the house around 68, so it's kind of difficult for it to get much lower. I could have waited until morning, but I mean 76 should be fine. It'll be cool by morning anyway, but I just thought I'd show everything going. It's crazy, crazy fast how that started. All right, maybe that's a good sign. I'll see you in a month. Bye-bye. All righty, folks, so it's time. Here we go. I do not have a reading quite yet. I was going to let it degas a little bit, but, you know, it started, looks like 1050 was the original gravity. And just, I mean, I'll get an official reading, but just eyeballing it, I mean, this sucker is almost... Yeah, I'd say it's like around 1010 or 1012. I'll get an official reading. And I can't remember what we thought it would go to. I don't know if I have that. I do. I thought it would go to 1014. So it's right about where I thought. So it's going to be somewhere around 5.5%. Got my keg ready. So I'm just going to transfer it to the keg. This tube goes all the way to the bottom, so no splashing. And... then I'll stick it in the refrigerator, let it sit on the CO2 for a week to carbonate. And I'll be back in a week so we can see how this smash beer tastes. So, I'll see you back here in a week. All right, folks. We made it. We're at the end. We get to check this beer out. Yeah, so I just poured this from the keg. There's a little bit of a head on there, not much, but there is a little bit, so that's nice. There's nothing but, I mean, I guess we could review this real quick. This is a smash beer, so it's single malt, single hop. There's not a lot to go on in here. So I'm trying to remember. So, well, I mean, so the malt is two-row. It's pale malt. It's what I use for almost all my beers. I'm trying to think of the hops. Yakima. Oh, I do use 2 different hops, so it's not really a smash beer. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I did. I used one. I used Yakima Chief Warrior hops. 14.2 alpha acid. 2 ounces. Yeah, so original gravity was 1057. Final gravity 1014. Ending ABV 5.56%. So it's pretty good. Yeah, what can I tell you? Washer. I don't know what that goes to, but I got a little washer stuck on there. So yeah, let's give it a sniff test. Smells like a typical kind of pale ale, which is what I would expect. I don't know how much the hops are going to affect. I feel like the carbonation could be a little bit stronger. I mean, I can see some carbonation in there. I see a floaty in there. It's interesting. You usually don't get that with the keg. Yeah, the carbonation seems a little low, which is, you know, kind of weird since it's kegged and it's force carbed. And I don't know if you can see or not. It's cloudy. It's pretty cloudy. That'll clear up depending on how long it takes me to drink it. And I'm not, you know, I'm never overly worried about cloudiness. I don't think I used any clarifying agents. Like I didn't use Werfleck tablet or anything. So And I usually don't because I don't really care whether it's cloudy or not. I mean, the only reason I would care is if I was like going to enter a competition, because I think that's one of the things they look at. But it doesn't change the taste of the beer. It's all visual. So it's a nice straw color, a little darker than I expected. So I kind of like that. So I think I teased this a little bit, but I don't remember. The plan, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 4 of these single malt, sort of single hop beers. So I can kind of compare the different malts, like 4 different base malts, just to see, how they taste different, how they look different, if there's any major difference in the alcohol content, the gravity content I get from them. It's just a fun little thing to do. I mean, how many people have tried that, There's lots of base malts. I'm not going to do all of them. I'm just going to pick like the 4 big ones. I'm kind of thinking about doing Munich next. I think that's one of the darker ones, just as a contrast. Because when I come back to some of the other ones, like Pilsner, for example, it's going to be another lighter colored one, or Vienna. So those are the 4 that I'm going to do. And this one, obviously, is one of them. And then what I'll do, I'm going to put a couple bottles of this away in the fridge. And then in about 4 months, I'll take this one out and the other 3, and I'll do a little video comparing all 4 like major base malts and the differences, and how they taste. You never know. I might decide that I like a different base malt flavor better than this, and I might switch and stop using this base malt as my, go-to, and start using something else. So. Anyway, you can see the head on it disappeared pretty quickly. But otherwise, yeah, it tastes good. Nice alcohol percentage. Nice light beer. Definitely got that sort of pale taste, like a pale ale. Sort of like a little, you can definitely get the hop bitterness. I'm trying to just, like in my mind, taste the malt and separate it from the hops. Yeah, it's really nice, clean, tastes great. So there you go. So what else can I tell you? Hit the subscribe button, and if you could hit the thumbs up, like button, that would help me out. I will probably have the next. Well, let's see. I have a different beer that's going to be done soon, and I don't know if I'm going to have, it'll probably be done in a couple weeks to a month. So it may be a couple months before you see the next smash beer. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. I have something else, though, coming up that you'll see before the next smash beer to make it super confusing for you. But then I'll do like the other smash beers right in a row so that I can compare them all. So there you go. I will, of course, put the recipe in the description, so if you want to give it a try, it is a super basic recipe, very easy. If you're looking for an easy beer to make, like it's your first all-grain recipe that you're trying out, this is a good way to go, because you get a nice, simple beer that tastes good. It's not very complicated. It's a minimal amount of grain, and you get a good beer that's hard to screw up. So at any rate, I'll see you again in a week for another video, and probably in about a month or so for another actual full brew of another beer. And until then, happy brewing.